Tonight, 2024 in full swing.
I'm announcing in Iowa.
Mike Pence and Christie set to join the roster of GOP presidential hopefuls. And the dam breaks.
Hundreds of thousands ordered to evacuate after Ukraine claims Russia destroyed a major dam near Kherson. Plus, the gift of clean water.
We have probably distributed filters in almost 30 countries now. We're actively working in about 12 countries.
A Texas ministry's mission to provide access to safe drinking water.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The starting line for the GOP White House primary race gets a little more crowded. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Former Vice President Mike Pence and former New Jersey Governor Christie are getting ready to throw their hats into the ring.
The latest entrants come as former President Donald Trump still dominates in early polling, even as his leading contender tries to gain a foothold. CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us now. Abigail, what's the latest in the race?
Well, John, there will soon be 12 candidates vying to lead the 2024 GOP ticket as both Christie and Mike Pence have filed the paperwork to launch their campaigns. Christie will make it official in New Hampshire tonight, while Pence goes to Iowa to reportedly make his announcement tomorrow.
Over the last 2 years, Karen and I have spent a lot of time reflecting and praying about everything this country's dealing with and what we might do to serve.
These two contenders enter a crowded field, including former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott.
I think people are hungry for something hopeful and optimistic.
Senator Scott made headlines this week on The View to address recent comments from the hosts about his campaign and systemic racism in America.
And one of the reasons why I'm on the show is because of the comments that were made, frankly, on this show, that the only way for a young African-American kid to be successful in this country is to be the exception and not the rule. That is a dangerous, offensive, disgusting message to send to our young people today.
Meanwhile, the two current frontrunners, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, are spending time sparring with one another.
We need to dispense with the culture of losing. Florida shows it can be done.
On stage, DeSantis tends to avoid invoking Trump's name, but criticizes his past policies and failure to secure the southern border, while Trump hits his one-time ally head-on. As the primary field expands, Republican leaders not in the running are encouraging those who are to drop out if they don't have a shot.
I mean, there could be 12 people that get in. The key, the discipline, is getting out. The discipline is come November, late December. If you're sitting in low, single digits, get your butt out of the race. Let's narrow this thing down to 2 or 3 candidates and really figure out where the party's going to go.
While the first GOP primary debate won't be until mid-August, candidates will have to meet certain polling and donor thresholds to make it on stage. John?
All right. Thank you, Abigail. Well, here now is CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, Christie, as Abigail just reported earlier, filed his paperwork earlier this afternoon. He enters the race tonight, kicking off his campaign with a town hall in New Hampshire. He ranks the worst among Republicans in favorability. So how does his entrance likely affect the field?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, look, Christie, just to be clear, isn't going to go anywhere. I mean, he's going to be a single-digit guy. I don't think there's any question about that. So how does he affect the race? He's going to be the attack dog. There's going to be others that attack Trump. Nikki Haley barely attacks Trump. Ron DeSantis will attack Trump. Asa Hutchinson will attack Trump. But Christie, look, he's from New Jersey. Hey, I was born in New Jersey. Are you with me? Those New Jersey guys, they're a bit rough and tumble. We know Christie is going to be the anti-Trump attack dog, and that will be his role in the campaign, during this campaign. And let's be honest, Donald Trump can dish it out. We know that. But he doesn't want Christie on the stage because Christie absolutely dismantled Marco Rubio in 2016 on the debate stage. Christie is a phenomenal debater. I think that's the storyline to watch going forward.
So Pence, he'll announce tomorrow in Iowa and then do a CNN town hall. David, it's hard to see how he breaks through with a crowded field and Trump. How do you see it? Is there a path for Pence here?
Very, very difficult. And that is in all caps, Jenna. I mean, he might win town sheriff of Iowa. Let's cue the applause. Good for him. But the pulse of the party right now is not with Mike Pence. It's with Donald Trump and populism. So I think the only way Mike Pence kind of makes it to the next round, if you will, is to finish either 1, 2, or 3 in Iowa. He's got to finish. And honestly, he would really need to win Iowa to have any sort of shot, maybe a close second. And that's the only way. But I thought, one of the commentators in the previous piece, and Abigail's piece, made a really good point, which is what I've been saying all along, which is what I believe I'm going to be watching specifically is how quickly do the other Republican candidates coalesce against one challenger to take on Trump, whether it be after Iowa or even before Iowa, because this did not happen, guys, in 2016. Remember, everybody wanted Marco Rubio to get behind Ted Cruz. He wouldn't do it. And then it went on for a while, and it was too late. I don't think that'll happen this time. I think you'll see a coalescing around one candidate to take on Trump come late December or sometime in January.
So Mike Pence, Christie, some pretty big names, maybe not as familiar. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, he's also set to announce tomorrow. With so many candidates barely even registering in the polls, David, how many of them will actually even qualify for this summer's first debate?
I mean, maybe 5, maybe. I mean, it just depends. Obviously, Ron DeSantis will be on the stage. Nikki Haley will be on that stage. Tim Scott should be on the stage as well. We don't know about Donald Trump. We assume he's going to debate, though there's been talk that he won't. So he may or may not. That's 4. And so I mean, I think it's going to be a smattering of folks, and then we wait. And Mike Pence most likely will be on the stage. So maybe 5, 6, but I don't think we're going to see the gentleman from North Dakota, if you will, or others on that stage.
DeSantis is still running pretty well behind Trump in the polls. Both, David, we've seen in recent weeks, locking horns in the headlines. Do you see DeSantis overtaking Trump, or is it going to take maybe the rest of the field coalescing behind him to do it?
Well, Jenna, you hit on it. That's the key. The rest of the field's going to have to coalesce behind DeSantis, and here's the key word: early. They can't wait. If they wait, it'll be too late. That's what happened in 2016. So that's the way forward for DeSantis. Look, on policy-wise, he's a culture warrior. He's right there on abortion, on gender ideology, on critical race theory. I mean, he's got the resume. But does he have the empathy? And what I mean by that, remember Bill Clinton back in the 90s? I feel your pain. He had that thumb. Yeah, feel your pain. Well, he was able to connect with voters. Donald Trump, the billionaire, was able to connect with blue-collar workers, a billionaire who speaks like a cab driver. He was able to feel their pain. DeSantis has yet to prove that he can do that. That is something I'll be watching. I don't think it'll happen, so he's going to have to rely on the policy to get him there.
All right, David Brody, we'll leave it there. Thank you, David.
You bet.
Thanks, David. Well, tonight it's looking more and more like Ukraine's long-awaited spring counteroffensive could be underway, although no formal announcement has been made. Even the Russians are admitting, though, Ukraine is gaining ground.
Meanwhile, a major dam has collapsed, affecting both sides of the war. CBN News correspondent Wendy Griffith has the latest on the battle lines. Wendy?
Evacuations are underway after the wall of a major dam that Moscow controls collapsed following an explosion. The result? Massive flooding now endangering Europe's largest nuclear power plant and threatening drinking water. Homes, streets, and businesses flooded downstream as emergency crews raced to check cooling systems at the power plant, which U.S. officials say appears to be safe.
Is that the damage to the Ukrainian people and to the region will be significant. Its destruction could very well have a devastating impact on Ukraine's energy security.
Ukraine is accusing Russian forces of blowing up the dam and hydroelectric power station, while Russia blames Ukrainian military strikes in the area.
The destruction of the Kakhovka Dam today puts thousands of civilians at risk and causes severe environmental damage. This is an outrageous act which demonstrates once again the brutality of Russia's war in Ukraine.
The dam break added a stunning new dimension to Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. Now in its 16th month, it's believed Ukrainian troops are moving forward with a long-anticipated counteroffensive. The Ukrainian army claimed to be gaining ground Monday along a wide front in the Bakhmut area, the epicenter of the fighting. and Russia admitting the spring advance may have begun as well. Could hinder Ukraine's counteroffensive in the south and complicate the advance of its forces. In the short term, some military experts say it's a win for Russia, at least until the water subsides. John, Jenna?
All right, Wendy Griffith reporting. Thank you so much, Wendy. Well, the first taxpayer-funded religious school in the United States. We'll show you where and why that matters. Next on Faith Nation.
Welcome back. Oklahoma could be home to the first publicly funded religious charter school in the United States. And a state school board there is getting instant pushback after approving its application. The virtual Catholic school in Oklahoma won approval for taxpayer funding Monday, approving St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual Charter School's application by a 3-2 vote. The online school would be open to kindergarten through 12th grade students across the state. Oklahoma's Attorney General, though, warns the school board the approval of any publicly funded religious school is unconstitutional and, quote, contrary to Oklahoma law and not in the best interest of taxpayers.
Well, Brett Farley is Executive Director of the Catholic Conference of Oklahoma, and he joins us now. Brett, welcome to you. So let's pick up where Jenna just left off with the Attorney General's statement. Is a state-sponsored religious charter school in Oklahoma unconstitutional? And if not, why?
It absolutely isn't. If we look at recent Supreme Court decisions, the last 3 decisions over the last 6 years on this subject, the Supreme Court's been very clear. A state's not required to give public funds to private schools, but if they choose to do that, they cannot prohibit religious institutions from participating in those programs. And so that's all we're doing is extending that constitutional right afforded to us by the U.S. Supreme Court.
The Oklahoma Attorney General, pretty outspoken against this. Does he have the power to overrule the charter school board's approval?
Thankfully, he does not. And I think it's important also to point out that his predecessor, who left office in November, wrote the seminal opinion stating exactly the opposite, that per the Supreme Court's decisions, we are not only in the right to be approved, but it's actually something that the state should be doing, should be approving religious liberty. Because, again, we're already doing this across the board in many states where we're giving public dollars to private religious schools. And so a charter school isn't really all that different than any other iteration of school choice, whether it's an ESA or a tax credit or a scholarship. And so it's a distinction without a difference.
So can I get you to respond to his statement specifically then, if he's saying a school board approval of any publicly funded religious school is unconstitutional and contrary to Oklahoma law and not in the best interest of taxpayers?
Sure.
How do you even respond to that? Why do you think he's making that claim?
Well, what he's referring to is both the state constitution and state statute that stem from the Blaine amendments, which have become quite notorious across the country. They were put into many state constitutions in the early part of the 20th century and were blatantly anti-religious. Those are the amendments that the Supreme Court has referred to as being unconstitutional and express violations of the First Amendment. So the Attorney General is just wrong. The Supreme Court's been very clear 3 times. And so, we're deferring to a Supreme Court precedent here.
This has both sides fired up, and what about possible unintended consequences if we see taxpayer funding for religious schools? Could there then in turn be, say, a satanic school curriculum?
Sure, it's a warranted concern. It's one thing that we need to take seriously with respect to any school choice program. What I think it's important to remember here is that Oklahoma is like many of the states that have been very innovative on the school choice front, implementing a new tax credit program just 2 weeks ago, where tax dollars are going to private schools, including religious schools, scholarships, ESAs, all sorts of programs of school choice. That threat is true for all of those, and yet we still don't see any satanic schools being established anywhere in the country. The reason for that is that there's no demand for them. Market choices and market forces are still at play here, regardless of the fact that there's public money going to these programs. And so if there are no parents demanding satanic education, then you're not going to see any schools established.
Brett, real quickly here in the a few seconds we have left, do you think this might end up at the Supreme Court?
It's very possible. We've already seen 3 cases similar to this arrive at the U.S. Supreme Court. And so, it really depends on our opponents and where they file. It's very possible they file in the federal court, and no matter what that court the lower court says, it will probably be appealed ultimately to circuit and then finally to the Supreme Court. So we would welcome that. We think it's a question that the U.S. Supreme Court should answer finally. If they do, it'll be the final chapter in this long conversation about what religious liberty really means in America, what the First Amendment means, and what exercise means to Americans.
All right, Brett Farley with the Catholic Conference of Oklahoma. Thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you all.
A worldwide crisis of a lack of access to clean drinking water. When we come back, how a Texas-based global Christian ministry is changing that.
A Texas businessman on a mission trip asked for a glass of water and came face to face with a stark reality. Most people in the world don't have access to safe drinking water.
At that moment, Chris Beth says he heard from the Lord speak 2 words: help them. 10 years and 20 countries later, 250,000 families now have clean water. And as Charlene Aaron reports, they're hearing the gospel as well.
From its headquarters here in North Texas, the Bucket Ministry is fulfilling its mission of sharing the love of God through providing the gift of safe, clean drinking water in places like North America, South America, Central America, Asia, and Africa.
We have probably distributed filters in almost 30 countries now. We're actively working in about 12 countries.
During a 2012 missions trip with his daughter to the Brazilian Amazon, Texas businessman Chris Beth saw firsthand what it meant to not have access to clean water after being asked if he was thirsty.
I expected her to go into a refrigerator and get a bottle of water. But what she did in turn is she went out into this little plank on this house, bent down with 2 cups. They were irregular, they were mismatched and cracked, and she filled these 2 cups up with river water.
Shocked by what he saw, Beth says what happened next was something he never imagined.
I've never been in the business of hearing God's voice. In fact, I thought when people said, God told me, I would think, oh boy. Yeah, and so I heard something, and I heard 2 words, and he clearly said, help them.
Beth began searching for a way to help as soon as he returned home. He found the answer at a Dallas camping supply store, where Beth saw a filter that uses the same technology as kidney dialysis that could be used to remove harmful bacteria from dirty water.
It attaches to any bucket or receptacle. I've went ahead and put some lake water in here from the local lake, so we'll see if we can make some clean water from this. So we'll tip the filter down and allow it to start filtering into the clean cup. And as you can see, the water is going from the bucket, through the hose, through the filter. The filter is capturing all the dirt, the debris, the parasites, everything that's making people sick from drinking unclean surface water. And this is what we're left with as a result.
Now equipped with filters, the Bucket Ministry was born as Beth returned to Brazil, supplying communities with clean, safe drinking water. Today, the ministry has a growing presence in more than 20 countries.
In the last 10 years, we've probably distributed in excess of 250,000. So we've helped about 250,000 families. Just last year alone, we distributed about 35,000.
One of its main outreaches is in the Kibera slum in Nairobi, Kenya, home to some 400,000 people. Most human waste ends up in the river that runs through the slum, contaminating the water, leading to disease and death. Daryl Larson serves as International Director for Sawyer Products, which makes the filter used by the ministry.
Our filter that you could take, the same one that backpackers and hikers use on the trail, but we devised a way to hook it up to a bucket, which is very common all around the world. And that's kind of how the Bucket Ministry started.
Larson says when his company, which gives 90% of its annual profits to clean water projects, learned that Beth wanted to give clean water to the entire Kibera slum, it jumped at the opportunity to get involved.
He had this incredible map of the slum, 3 square miles, 400,000 people, and it ended up being 95,000 homes. And Sawyer actually donated all 95,000 of the filters.
The difference has been life-saving, as the number of people sick and dying from waterborne illness has dropped dramatically.
We are hearing reports that the numbers of patients coming through clinics are so few compared to what it was that clinics are having to close and consolidate operations.
Providing clean water has also led to many opportunities to share the gospel.
We use the water as a tool, and it's a tool to get to that point of sharing the gospel. So for us, it's all about the Great Commission and going and making disciples.
The filter can last more than 20 years if cleaned daily. Each filter distributed is stamped with a unique barcode, something that allows Beth and his team to track the success of the filter, as well as the physical and spiritual health of families and communities they serve.
I've been blessed over 10 years to be able to see mothers that didn't name their children because they knew the children were going to die. I get to see them have this clean water for the first time through this simple tool.
A simple tool that's made a big difference in Beth's life, too.
Prior to the last 10 years, I was not involved with the church. I wasn't even a very good follower of Jesus. Now I get to see him work every single day. And what it's done for me is it's given me a faith that I don't think I would have ever had without seeing him work like this.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Houston.
Finally tonight, a high school senior in California fulfilled his own dream when he walked across the stage to get his diploma.
That's right. At 13 years old, Macaulay Lauren became paralyzed from the waist down while doing a flip on a trampoline. He started physical therapy with the goal of walking at his Buchanan High School graduation. And last week, Lauren fulfilled that dream, walking 25 steps across the stage.
Macaulay Lauren.
And Lauren's inspiring victory was met with thunderous applause. You can hear a bit of it there from the audience and his fellow students. Congratulations to him. That's wonderful to see. It's very inspiring.
You can tell he's a rock star, and I wouldn't bet against that kid at all.
I bet the school loves him.
Determination. Thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great night.